Hi, friends. Welcome to week 22 of the Bible Together reading program here at First Christian Church in Jefferson City, Missouri. This week in our readings, we come to the end of David's story and the beginning of Solomon's. And I find myself thinking about a saying I once heard. Blessed are those who plant trees under whose shade they will never sit. Whether or not you've ever heard those exact words before, you have probably experienced their truth. Someone planted the trees that shade our parks and our streets today. Someone built the schools we attended and the churches in which we worship. Someone taught us how to read, how to pray, and how to love. Someone invested in a future they would never fully see. So much in life depends on people who are willing to do work whose fruits will be enjoyed by others. That's what I see happening throughout the readings this week. By the time we reach 1 Chronicles 22, David knows that he will not be the one to build the temple. That honor is going to belong to Solomon. And yet, David spends his final years gathering materials and organizing worship, appointing leaders, and preparing everything he can for a project he'll never see completed. I wonder if that was difficult. Most of us want to finish what we start. We want to see the results of our labor. We want the satisfaction of standing back and saying, there it is, it's done. But David doesn't get that moment with the temple. Instead, he spends his final years investing in a future that will belong to someone else. That same idea echoes through Psalm 78. The psalmist retells Israel's stories so that future generations will remember. Again and again, the psalm looks backwards in order to look forward. Tell the stories. Remember what God has done. Pass it on. Because faith is never just about us and our salvation. It is always being handed from one generation to the next. Then, when Solomon begins his reign, he does something special. He asks God for wisdom. When presented the opportunity to ask for anything he wants, he asks for wisdom. He understands that he is inheriting something he didn't build alone. Others have prepared the way before him. Others have planted seeds whose harvest he will reap. When we turn to the New Testament readings from Paul, I see the same thing. As I was reading Romans, it occurred to me that Paul is doing this same kind of thing. We read Romans knowing how the story of Christianity turns out, at least so far. We know that the gospel spreads far beyond the churches that Paul planted. We know that Christianity eventually reached places Paul never even visited. We know that nearly 2,000 years later, people around the world are still reading this letter. But Paul didn't know any of that. He was simply proclaiming the good news of Jesus Christ as faithfully as he could. He was writing to the believers in Rome whom he had never met yet. He was working out his theology and wondering how well it matched up with theirs, hoping to be able to present a united front with them when he returned to Jerusalem. He could not have imagined that his words would someday be read in lands he never knew existed, in languages he never spoke, by people he could never have conceived of meeting. Yet he wrote the letter anyway. He planted a seed and trusted God with the growth. That is the thing about faithfulness. We rarely know what God will do with it. David gathered stones and timber, precious metals and jewels for a temple he would never see completed. The psalmist told stories for generations not yet born. Paul proclaimed a gospel whose reach he could never have imagined. And here we are, in a very real sense, sitting in the shade of trees they planted. Which makes me wonder what trees we are planting now. What conversations we have with our children, what kindnesses we offer, the ministries we support, and the prayers that we pray, the way we bear witness to God's love in the world. We may never know how far those things will travel. We may never see the full harvest, but how exciting is it to imagine? As you continue reading this week, consider this. What future might God be inviting us to invest in today, even if we never get to see how the story ends? Thanks for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great day.